Now let us discuss about the magnetic substances. So as discussed that the domains align in different ways, and they make different types of because of them materials can be magnetic or non-magnetic, and they can show different magnetic properties. So on the basis of their properties, magnetic properties, we have three different types of substances. First is the diamagnetic substance, second is the paramagnetic substance, and third is the ferromagnetic substance. So first let's take a few examples of these substances. So the diamagnetic substances are copper, water, quartz, bismuth, antimony. Paramagnetic is aluminum, chromium, lithium, platinum. Ferromagnet is iron, nickel, cobalt, and some alloys. Okay. So what is this diamagnetic, paramagnetic? So diamagnetic materials are the materials which weakly repel the magnetic field, external magnetic field. That is, if you have them in magnetic field, let's say if you have a bar magnet, and if you have a diamagnetic material, let's say if you have copper here, so this copper will get weakly repelled by this magnet. Okay, weakly, remember, not that much, but it will be weakly repelled by the magnet. So those materials are diamagnetic materials. If you have a paramagnetic material, they will be weakly attracted. So let's say again we have a north and a south pole. So if you have aluminum here, so it will be very weakly attracted towards the magnet. And what about the ferromagnet? So this is quite common, you must have seen iron. So if you have a magnet and if you have an iron piece, so it gets strongly attracted towards the magnet. It does not matter, by the way, whether it is north pole or south pole, because the alignment will be such that it will always get attracted. So this is the main thing. This two gets attracted, but this gets weakly attracted and this gets strongly attracted. The relative permeability is less than 1, the relative permeability is more than 1, and relative permeability is quite much more than 1 in case of ferromagnetic. Usually it occurs when the atoms have even pairs of electron, and this happens when the atoms have odd number of electrons, and this happens when the domains are aligned. Okay, as I told you, when domains get aligned, then only the material will become magnetic. So ferromagnetic are the strongest magnetic materials. So this, if we have a material, diamagnetic material, so what will happen, it will strongly get repelled. So this will be a dip here, and the paramagnetic will strongly get attracted. So there will be a hill here. Okay, and there will be a small hill here. So a valley, a small hill, and a large hill. So remember that diamagnetic weakly repel, paramagnetic weakly attract, and ferromagnetic strongly attract. Now there is a concept of Curie temperature. So Curie temperature is the maximum temperature up to which a ferromagnetic substance can remain ferromagnetic. So for example, for iron, it is approximately in the range of 750 degrees Celsius. So after 750 degrees Celsius, iron will not be ferromagnetic, because its alignment will become very much disaligned. The magnets will be very much disaligned. Why? Because increasing temperature increase the kinetic energy, which will disalign the domains. So the ferromagnetic material will become paramagnetic on increasing the temperature. Okay, so remember the concept of Curie temperature, maximum temperature up to which the ferromagnetic material can remain ferromagnetic. So now let's discuss the last part, which is the galvanometer. So galvanometer is a very interesting device. It is a current sensitive device. Galvanometer is a current sensitive device. So using galvanometer we can measure current, we can also measure voltage, we can also measure the resistance. So most of the ammeters and voltmeters are made up of galvanometer. So we will mostly focus on the moving coil galvanometer. There are other types of galvanometers as well, but the most common is the moving coil galvanometer. So the working of the moving coil galvanometer is quite simple. So let's first understand the construction of the galvanometer. So first of all, we have a magnet having north pole here and the south pole here. So we have the magnetic field which is given by the permanent magnet. Now there is a coil in between. So here is a coil having multiple turns. Okay, this coil has multiple turns. So this is a coil having multiple turns. Now there is a suspension which has a spring over here attached to any surface fixed point. A mirror is over here, and there is this upper suspension which holds this mirror and the coil. So what happens is that when we have a current carrying coil, we will apply some current, by the way. In this we will have some current in this coil. So when we have a current carrying coil in an external magnetic field, the magnetic field will be like this, north to south. So obviously this current carrying wire or coil will also have a magnetic field of its own. So the two magnetic fields will interact with each other, and those two magnetic fields will interact in such a manner that this there will be a force exerted by one magnet on the another magnet. So we know that this permanent magnets are usually quite heavy, so they will be fixed at their location in general, and the coil will be able to rotate. So what will happen when the current is more in this coil, the coil will rotate, okay, on its axis, and the more the current, more will be the force and more will be the rotation, and because of that more torque and more force, the needle here will deflect more. So the mirror will show us the amount of deflection, and we can connect a needle with this coil, and the amount of rotation will be shown by the deflecting needle. So the working is quite simple. More current will be there, more deflection will be there. So we can easily measure the value of current by calibrating it. So this is the basic working of the moving coil galvanometer. Now once the current is stopped, then because of this spring, the coil will again move back to its mean position or the original position or zero current position. So it is quite important to have a restoring torque. So first of all, we have a torque which is provided by the normal torque. This is K into theta. This is normal torque, and we know that magnetic torque will be NIA into B, where N is the number of turns or of the coil. So this means NIAB is equal to K theta. This is just like force is equal to Kx in spring. Similarly here in spring, torque is equal to K theta for rotation. So current will be K over NAB into theta, and this constant is called galvanometer constant. So we can write it like this also, galvanometer constant K over NAB. Now let me remind you, this is the angular displacement or angle by which the coil is turned. K is the spring constant or force or torque constant. B is the external magnetic field. N is the number of turns per unit length in the coil, and A is the area of the coil. A is the area of the coil. So remember this formula. So now there is this concept of sensitivity. So this G, which will be if we have theta over I, so this will be 1 over G. So this is also called the sensitivity. Sensitivity means for how much current, how much deviation will be there. So it is quite simple. So let's just call it sensitivity. So current sensitivity is the amount of current that we are applying, and for that current how much deflection is shown by the galvanometer. Now we can do two things. We can have a galvanometer in which we can apply the resistance in parallel, and we can have a galvanometer in which we can apply the resistance in series. So they will get the galvanometer will get converted into a ammeter or a voltmeter because of that. So first of all, let's try to understand the concept of ammeter and voltmeter. So ammeter is a device which measures current, and voltmeter is a device which measures voltage. Now obviously if you want to measure current, then you need to connect the ammeter in a circuit in series, connected in series with the device whose current you want to calculate, and it is connected in parallel to the device whose voltage you want to calculate. So for example, let's say this is our circuit. You want to measure the current in the bulb, so you can connect the ammeter in series. And let's say if you want to measure the voltage of the bulb, so you can apply this voltmeter in parallel to the bulb. So this is quite important to understand, because in series the current remains same, in parallel the voltage remains same. So because of that, remember, the resistance of ammeter must be very low. Ideally speaking, it should be 0, and the resistance of voltmeter must be very high, and if I ideally say, ideally it must be infinity. So what does this mean? This means that if we have an ammeter in any circuit, then its resistance must be 0. Why? Because if the resistance of this ammeter is high, then the current will not be able to flow in the circuit, and the bulb will not properly go. There will not be much current in the bulb, and in the process of measuring the current, we will make the current very low. So the resistance should be very low so that the current can flow as it is. But in voltmeter, if the resistance here is low, so what will happen? Current chooses the path, more current will be going through the path which is having less resistance. So if its resistance is less, then most of the current will pass through this path, and the bulb will have very less current, again which is not desirable. So we want the resistance to be high so that no current can pass through this voltmeter. Okay, this voltmeter only need to calculate voltage which will be obtained by these two terminals. So no current has to be passed through the voltmeter. So because of that, ideally its resistance should be infinity so that no current can pass through the voltmeter path. So we can make the galvanometer is like this. Galvanometer is there, and there is a galvanometer resistance also. So if you want to have a ammeter using this galvanometer, then what we can do, we can connect a resistance in parallel to this, which is called the shunt resistance. Okay, which is called the shunt means parallel resistance. So this parallel resistance will reduce the overall resistance. We know that when resistances are connected in parallel, the value of equivalent resistance becomes less. Okay, so when we need ammeter, then we connect a shunt resistance in the galvanometer. And obviously you might now guess that if you want to have a galvanometer converted into voltmeter, so you will connect a resistance in series with the galvanometer, so that you can have a very high resistance of the voltmeter. So this is the situation. This is how you can convert galvanometer into voltmeter and ammeter. For ammeter, connect the resistance in parallel so that overall resistance reduce. For voltmeter, connect it in series so that resistance become high, and for ammeter connect it in parallel so that resistance becomes less. So this is how galvanometer can be used as a voltmeter and an ammeter.